We blocking you from starting?
Classes are over,
We gotta get out of the way here. How's Gator?
He's good. He's married.
it's broad, but yeah, it's fine.
I went to HBS and I came back out. I did balls and my bonds.
Oh, that's great. Definitely. That'd be awesome. Perfect. And I'm so they're good at me. Yes, I think you guys are the first. So.
Let me get on the
I think we are missing a chair.
Oh, wait, let me get
There's one more chair right there.
I'll take this chair. Oh, there is.
Well, it's 2:35 now. I think, let me know if the microphone's working. Yes, we're good. Thank you. Well, first of all, welcome everybody. Delighted to see everybody here. Welcome to Yale. Welcome to the Innovation Summit. Everyone here is all about innovation, and we have so many potential people that can contribute to that. So it's just wonderful that we can bring so many people together. Partners, researchers, entrepreneurs, investors. This is 2 wonderful days of where collaboration and discussions hopefully can advance more things. So it's my pleasure to be hosting this today, our panel talking about filling the pipeline with intent. We know that innovation can come from any place, at any time, and we know that diverse teams make great decisions and make great discoveries. However, no matter how much we know this, we still believe and see that there is a great underrepresentation of women in the innovation pipeline. And today's panel is to focus a little bit about what we're doing about this within an academic setting. Tomorrow we have another panel talking about what we're doing through an investors panel. Don't worry, it happens to us all. And so I should introduce myself first of all. I'm Morag Grassie. I'm at Yale Ventures. I've been with Yale Ventures for about 4.5 years now. I work on the Blavatnik Fund for Innovation, which helps faculty translate their ideas from concept through to hopefully what will be a proof of concept slide, such that we can actually spin out a company or partner with somebody to have a new biotech or new startup. What I noticed as part of the Blavatnik Fund, that there was very few people, very few women actually applying, and that then birthed the idea of a programme which we call Amplifier Science. And through generating the programme Amplifier Science to support women innovators and researchers, we reached out to many other institutes across the country to find out about best practices. And one thing that we really want to do is constantly to bring everybody together so that we can all learn from each other. And today in the room, we've got some great examples of some leaders in the field. Particularly, I'm delighted to have the MIT contingent here today, because you guys really have, with Susan Hopfield, have done so much in terms of increasing awareness about the inequity for women innovators. So the way the panel is going to be split up today, we're going to spend a little bit of time hearing about MIT's programme that supports women innovators. We're then going to move on to hear a little bit about Equalise, which was founded out of Roche, and then a little bit more about what Princeton are doing with their Empower. And then, if time permits at the end, we'll talk a little bit about what Amplifier Science is doing here at Yale. But I don't want to spend too much time talking. I want to hand over to the panel to let them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their programmes and who they represent within their programmes, their functions, their challenges, their successes. So I'm going to hand over straight off to Kit, and I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you. My name is Kit Hickey, and I'm here with Laura representing MIT. So we're just going to take a few minutes and talk about what we're doing at MIT and why we're doing it. So in 2019, 3 senior faculty members at MIT set out to explore kind of who was commercializing their biotech technologies and who was not. And they did a study across the 8 schools, which constitute what we think of as human health. And what they found was that female faculty members were not commercializing their technology at the same rate as males. And in fact, if female faculty members had commercialized at the same rate as male faculty members, there would be an additional 40 biotech companies coming out of MIT. So MIT is a place that really prides itself on translational research, on bringing ideas to life, and helping patients and making the world a better place. So this was seen as a failure. These technologies are dying in the labs. They're not being commercialized. They're not getting into patient hands. And so we set off to explore what can we do to ensure that female faculty members are commercializing at the same rate as male faculty members, to make sure that these technologies could get out in the world. So myself, along with a professor, Sangeeta Bhatia, started doing a listening tour. So we spoke to about 30 female faculty members across MIT. And what we found probably is not surprising, but some things we heard were, one, the female faculty members felt like they were taking on more service work compared to their male colleagues. So they were mentoring more students, they were asked to teach tougher classes, they were on more committees. That's what it means in academia, as one. Two, they wanted to get in a place where X, Y, or Z was de-risked before they started a company. So we heard a lot of, when my kids are older, when I reach tenure, when the technology is more mature. So there was a lot of talk about de-risking. And three, they felt like they didn't have the same networks as their male colleagues. So a lot of VCs would be approaching male faculty members saying things like, when you commercialize, let me know, I'll be happy to fund, but they didn't have those same relationships. So Professor Bhatia and I started the MIT Future Founder Initiative to address some of those issues. So we got funding from North Pond Ventures, which is a biotech VC in Boston, and we put together a year-long program to help female faculty members commercialize their technology. We worked with 10 female faculty members, and they went through a 9-month program where they learned things such as, how do I incorporate? How do I hire a CEO? What's my IP strategy? Like, what does it even mean to be a professor that is commercializing technology? It's a very different path than just if I wanted to start a company. And so that was a big, we also matched them with best-in-class mentors. So you heard from Laura, who is a mentor, and we gave them stipend money. So after our listening tour, we went back to North Pond, our donor, and said, a lot of these faculty members really need time. Can we give them stipends so they can buy time, and they could use it for anything they wanted. They could use it for travel, childcare, hiring postdocs, and just buying time to work on their company. So we went through the year, and what we found was that 8 of our 9 participants are continuing on with their venture right now, where this is about 2 years out. We also did a partnership with Sloan where we matched them with Sloan MBA students, and the MBA students got credit for working on the faculty member projects. And this was also a win-win for the Sloan students and enabled them to work on MIT technology. And for the professors, it was really their first time working with a business person, so they were able to evaluate what's it like to work with a business person, what kind of person do I want to hire, and such as that. So we've seen great success in the program. What we heard later was, when we did kind of exit interviews after the program, was many of the faculty members said, I wanted to start a company, but it would have been 3 or 5 years later if it wasn't for this program. So this program really gave people the push to actually start a company sooner. And so we are continuing on. We're launching our next cohort in September. And we are continuing to partner with other universities to bring their faculty members into our program, and looking at additional ways to scale. So we're here today, and Laura can talk about more of the mentor side, but I think I also wanted to leave you with some ideas if you are interested in this kind of thing. So we really do encourage folks to, if you're in a decision-making role, to have certain metrics, whether that's you're going to meet with one female founder a quarter, or mentor female founders, or invest in female founders. There are programs like this that people could be involved in, either through donors or mentors, and also just being aware of the issues that typically hold back female founders, I think is a very important thing to just be aware of. So I'm excited we all get together and get to talk about our own programs and the successes we've seen, because as we all know, it is a very large problem that is really holding back technology from reaching the world. So I'm really glad to be joined with other folks that are looking at the problem. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Laura Lande-Diner, and as Kit mentioned, I was a mentor at the first Future Founders program. I'm a PhD scientist by background, and post-academically I've been a serial entrepreneur working in company creation, co-founded 4 companies, 3 in therapeutics and 1 in agriculture as part of flagship pioneering, and then joined Satellite as employee number 1 3 years ago. I think over the years, my expertise has been in taking a technology and turning it into an operationalized company. And in that regard, I was invited to join the program as a mentor. What I observed when working with these women is primarily that, in general, women feel that when they question themselves or whether they are ready to launch something or not, I think women are more critical and they are less willing to take a risk unless they feel internally sure that they have hit a certain level of maturity. And because there are no publicly available benchmarks, right, you cannot Google, is my technology ready for prime time, or how do I do this? And so there's no transparency around the process, and so people are left to make that decision internally. And intrinsically for women, I think it's harder to make that leap than for men. I think hearing from others, from peers and from mentors, helped get that perspective that in most of the cases, as evidenced by 8 out of 9 professors having companies now, in most of the cases the technologies were ready for prime time. And it's just a matter of having that reassurance and that validation that today needs to be external, but hopefully once this becomes more common, it will be more easily identifiable. And then the second piece is that because of that, there are many technologies in labs led by women that are ready for prime time. And so from a VC perspective, it's worth going and talking to these investigators because there may be a lot of assets that are available for licensing that wouldn't otherwise be recognizable as such. So I would say, as Kit mentioned, maybe the take-home message is that if you're a woman and you have a technology, try to find a way to figure out whether it's ready or not. Reach out to kids, reach out to other people like me. Usually, people are more willing to speak and to give feedback than what people imagine. And so that network is available to you. And then if you're an investor, go and talk to female researchers because they may have very interesting technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We do actually have a number of other people up on the slide that we were going to have a more extended panel today, but we decided that both Kit and Laura could represent the MIT. So if you're wondering why we're missing some people, that's why we haven't lost them in the corridors. We did make that conscious decision. But the MIT program, it really is quite unique in that you have the funds that you can actually help the women faculty come on. So it really is a flagship program that I think it would be fabulous if many other academic institutes could actually be able to replicate. So that is very much focused on a program which focuses on the institute's own researchers. I'm going to hand over to Kirsten to talk a little bit now more about Equalize. Introduce yourself. Tell the audience your involvement in Equalize and how that actually covers much larger than just one institution.
Sure. So I'm Kristen Leute. I'm a partner at Osage University Partners. We're a venture capital firm that invests in startups out of academic institutions. And with that kind of broad base that we work with actually over 100 academic institutions, we started working with Nicole Mercier at WashU because she had her own internal program as well. She still runs this program. And she said, one of the things that I'm really hearing as well as seeing at other institutions is that people really need communities where they can talk with people about their experiences. And sometimes when you're just at your institution, you're kind of limiting what it is that you're able to learn within that with your own geography or ecosystem. And so we decided to establish something called Equalize, but I'm going to give you some numbers beforehand, before I talk about the program itself, just to give you an idea of the scale of the issue. In 2019, the number of U.S. patents that were issued, 13% of those had a woman on them. Of those, actually, if you look at academic institutions, it's actually a little bit better. It's 18% had a female inventor on them, or someone who identified as females. We then at OUP, because we work with so many academic institutions, we did an analysis of the companies that we've been tracking. So we analyzed 7,500 companies to look for female founders associated with those companies. And of those companies, this was actually in 2020 when Stephanie Stamen, who was on our staff, she did this analysis again. She'd done it once before in 2017. She did it again and found that 13% of the companies we were tracking had a female founder. 13%. That is woefully below how many people should actually be potentially involved in these companies if we were going towards parity, just alone with faculty representation at the academic institutions. And so then Nicole and I had also been involved in another group where we've been looking at the problem, particularly of gender disparity with regards to the innovation journey at academic institutions. And with that particular group, we actually went out and did a study of women at academic institutions in the deep sciences, and we were able to get 168 people, I think it was, 168 women to respond to a survey about what their barriers were in taking that innovation journey. And the 5 top things that came up were lack of network, lack of mentorship, a lack of training, lack of even knowing where to go. They just didn't have a roadmap of what to do and what their steps should be. And the 5th one was time. And that goes back to some of the points you were making about this being overwhelmed with all the other potential duties that were going on. And we only talked about the academic duties, but we're also talking about the other duties that women tend to take on a lot more of. And so the Equalize program addresses 3 to 4 of those. It does not address the time question. We don't know how to address that particular question, although I have lots of ideas on that. So the Equalize program we started in 2019. We had our first cohorts in 2020, and we basically went out to all of the people that we knew at tech transfer offices across the nation and said, hey, we are starting a program where we will provide a one-on-one mentor for the women. We'll provide some training, and at the culmination event will be this pitch competition, where they basically are going to learn how to pitch along the way, but also get all of their questions answered, by this person and in peer communities and other types of events that we will do with the women. So we actually started we had planned to have a culmination event in person, but 2020 happened, and we actually went totally virtual, and we're staying virtual because we are a national program. And so we started out with 12 women the first year, I think the 13 the second, 15 the third, and we actually have 23 women in this year's cohort. The women are paired with a mentor, sometimes 2 mentors, but paired with at least 1 mentor for 6 months. They are required to not have had more than $1 million in dilutive funding in their startup. They could have absolutely no funding whatsoever. That's perfectly fine. But at the same time, we want them to be far enough along that, product would be in their sights within, depending on their area, a certain number of years. So that it's not just at that point, a bench project. It is something where they have started to think about their entrepreneurial journey. And then we currently have 7 training programs we put them through. We originally had planned for 4 this year, but they kept asking for more. They're like, oh, could you do one on this? Could you do one on that? So we added a whole bunch more this year. And then I'm going to say 2 more things because I know I've already gone a long time. So we started this program and we housed it within WashU because that was very easy to do. We were able to use WashU resources to help us with it, even though it was a national program. 2 years ago, we got a Title IX complaint from the Justice Department because the program focuses on one gender. and that there wasn't exactly an equal program for all genders. And rather than dispute the complaint, we decided to take the program out of WashU and create our own nonprofit. So Equalize is now its own entity, a nonprofit. It is basically our startup for two people who've never started a startup before. It's been a really interesting journey for us, but fortunately we have such a great community in academia that's been helping us along the way, that we actually were able to get our 501c3 status, et cetera. We have a strategic plan, have all these committees. I might call out to all of you, is if anyone's interested in helping us, come and talk to me, because we are looking for people to help us in the future, because our future is not just the current program. We are planning on expanding it. And the ways that we are planning on expanding is right now we are focused on female faculty. We plan on next year actually having cohorts also for postdocs and grad students. We've been asked for this for the last couple of years with the programs, but we feel that the barriers that each of these groups are encountering, as well as the other demands on their time, et cetera, and where their next positions are different, and so we plan to have separate cohorts for those in those positions. And honestly, we are also then looking at expanding the program out as far as diversity as well. We focused in some ways on females because it was easy. It is harder when you go to the other underrepresented populations that we all know are also underrepresented in all these areas of the innovation journey. The last thing I will say before I pass it over to Don is that we have our culmination event on June 29th. You can look us up. We're at equalizeprogram.org. Please come and join us. We'd love to have any people come and hear about our terrific pitchers and the journeys that they've gone through. We started out just doing and this was partially self-selection. The first 2 years we only had women who were in therapeutics and med tech. This year we have also a digital tools group as well as a physical sciences cohort as well. So we're very excited about that. And with that, I will pass it on, or you can introduce Don.
Fabulous. We could let you go on and on, and there's so many different components that we could follow up with afterwards as well, but I'm going to let Don tell a little bit about Princeton's initiative, Empower.
Thank you, Morag, and thanks for everyone to join us today. So I work at Princeton. I'm also an alumnus there, and a couple of years ago, like many schools, we decided to sort of raise our game, if you will, in the area of what we're focusing on primarily, which is inclusive academic entrepreneurship. So really, as Kit's team is doing, as you heard from Kirsten, really helping underrepresented academic entrepreneurs achieve success in their entrepreneurial journeys. STEM fields, engineering fields, social sciences, social impact, everyone is welcome. And one of the programs that emanated from a big strategic planning process that we undertook was something we call Empower. Empower just finished its second annual conference. It is a conference that focuses, or I should say, welcomes all entrepreneurs and all investors, but particularly those who have a strong commitment to DEI. And even more so, the first conference was a celebration of Black academic entrepreneurs, and the one we just finished less than a couple of months ago was a celebration of women academic entrepreneurs. And what we tried to do, it's a global conference, like Kirsten's Equalize, virtual the first 2 years. It probably will become hybrid in future years because there's something special as evidenced today and tomorrow about bringing people together. But because of its global impact and potentially greater impact, we want to make sure that finances and time aren't constraints for people to participate. But the way we've sort of structured it, at least in the first 2 years, was to have special, a series of workshops, panel discussions, networking sessions around first-time or academic entrepreneurs who are thinking about and launching a business, much like how Kit and Laura described it, to those who are funding a business, much like Equalize also is very targeted, and then those who are beyond maybe a seed stage round or even a Series A round and scaling a business. And we brought lots of experts to the virtual stage to share knowledge, share resources, and ultimately share connections. The audience, so far in the first 2 years, Morag, we've engaged about 2,000 people in the audience. We aspire to have the kind of impact that the Yale Innovation Summit has in terms of bringing many, many people together, and it's growing each year. A special component of the Empower Conference is, much like Equalize, a pitch competition. And this year, again, we invited any startup founder who is commercializing university-developed intellectual property from any university across the world to apply. We had a couple hundred applications. Not bad, but I look forward to the day, as is MIT, I think, to see that number grow exponentially. But anyway, from those couple hundred applications, we winnowed it down to 32. We had a selection committee then actually engaged with each of those founders. We ultimately selected 6. Those 6 were assigned a couple of mentors apiece, a pitch coach, but also another almost advisory level executive to help them with pricing decisions or go-to-market plans, things of that nature. And then we brought them all to New York. And we did have a live portion of Empower this year where we had a room full of, a complete room full of venture capitalists. Because what we're really trying to do, Kirsten cited some data. We all know the data, on average, 2% of venture money goes to women founders. Much less than that go to founders of color. And academia is probably doing better than those numbers, but certainly not enough. So we want to connect the funding community, primarily VCs and angels, with these outstanding founders. And the 6 female founders who presented, 3 of them were awarded prizes ranging from $10,000 to $100,000 in cash. And we also brought the founder who won the first Empower pitch competition, happened to be a black female founder, and she shared her story about how Empower connected her with $8 million of seed capital. So it can work one step at a time, and I'll leave that or leave you with a couple other just quick thoughts. Princeton's also trying to reach out to the underrepresented populations through a couple of other programs. One is actually a research collaborative that we've launched with HBCUs, where we actually take Princeton faculty and their counterparts from initially five different HBUs, and they all work on specific research projects. Extremely well-funded program, but with the intent ultimately to take that research through the Empower program, perhaps through Equalize, perhaps send them up to MIT. I think the opportunity to collaborate and to partner in this space is not untapped, but offers a great opportunity. So my last comment is join us. And I think you've heard that from everyone on the panel. Anyone who is an academic founder or a venture capitalist or just entrepreneurially curious, we want you to become part of this building momentum, this building community, so that we really can impact in a positive way both female and other underrepresented academic founders. So thanks.
Thank you. So there's so many things that, as you talk about your different programs, which are quite different, but obviously all have the great commonality of the good work that you're doing. The one thing that I want to say, the reason why we have programs like today is so that there's awareness of these programs, because the more people are aware of them, the more they want to replicate them, they want to participate in them. So thank you for taking the time to come here and share your experience and everything that you're doing. So to give a little bit of an overview of what we're doing here at Yale for Amplifier Science. As I said, I was part of the Blavatnik Fund for Innovation at Yale, and so I had first sight of the lack of women who actually applied to our innovation fund. And there's so many potential hurdles, and when we spoke to people, we tried to work out what those potential hurdles were. And our experience over the last 3 years is that, frankly, we need to reach out to each individual woman and find them. And it is a hard slog to encourage these women to get involved. There is no easy solution to it. Maybe in 10, 15 years' time, as it just becomes the norm and people have the confidence to actually advance their research through innovation and entrepreneurship, those barriers may disappear. But for the moment, we find it's individual outreach and really hard work to reach into the community to find many of our women faculty who have potentially great ideas that could then be translated. And from what our three panelists have been saying today, three programmes, what Amplifier Science tries to do is we try to recognise and spotlight our women entrepreneurs so that if we have investors, they actually become familiar with these women, because very often what we hear from an investor, well, we don't know this person, are they reputable? And so we try to organise events, and we've actually done one in collaboration with Princeton where we had a virtual event, and I'll comment on the virtual thing later as well, so that we could actually spotlight more of our women researchers so that investors and partners actually become familiar with them and their research. So that's the first thing, is recognition and spotlighting. Obviously, in order to be able to present them well, we have a training programme which supports them, and it's also through mentorship and coaching. So the work that Laura does is so super important for our faculty to understand that they can actually be innovators and entrepreneurs, and having female mentors is a wonderful, wonderful thing, so that they know they can aspire to doing this. We create networking opportunities, and we have created an event that we call Collaborative Connecticut here in New Haven. It happens once a month. It is totally gender agnostic, so if you were to come along to the event, which everybody is welcome to, we publicise it wildly. And there's anybody in the biotech community is welcome, from researchers all the way down to service providers. But the goal was to have an event where women in particular could just turn up and network with other potential future CEOs of their company, or talk to other people who are expressing having the same problems that they might be having. But as I say, you might find 120 to 180 biotech people at these events, and you would not know that it was started with the main goal of it being a women's networking event, or rather providing the opportunity for women to network. So I think that's a great lesson, to have these gender agnostic, pushing the message of women being a disadvantaged group is a hard thing. It's nobody's interested in this. We want to have a positive message, and we want to create these opportunities. So Collaborative Connecticut, if anybody doesn't know of it and you're in Connecticut and New Haven, on the third Thursday of every month we have it. Just look up Yale Ventures website and you can find where it is. The other thing that we try and do as part of Amplifier Science is provide our community with as much information in a timely manner as possible. It's always difficult because very often these opportunities come up at last minute, but what we have is a 2-weekly blast that we send out to a focus group, and we try and highlight things which might be of interest, because trying to find these opportunities can be very challenging. So that's awareness again. And then the last thing we do is we have our podcasts where we try and spotlight successful women so that they can see either a founder or a mentor or whatever it may be in the biotech space, so that women know that they can actually have, they can aspire to, and it is possible for them to succeed. So that's amplifier science. But I wanted to open up the conversation a little bit with some of the things that we spoke about as each person picked up. And Don, the last thing that jumped out to me is the virtual thing. And during COVID, so one thing that we found through this personalised outreach, we changed our numbers of women applicants and successful women applicants for the Blavatnik Fund from 8% to 18% to 26% to 48% to 56%, which was clearly a purple patch one year. But it was all through personalised outreach. And we found that during COVID, because we were really actively outreaching to these women, and it was through virtual meetings, and we could have them at 6 o'clock at night, or we could have them early in the morning where they didn't have other commitments. It actually provided that flexibility to allow women to engage in innovation and entrepreneurship more. And so I'd like to pass it back to Don in your comments about your virtual events for Empower, because you are doing, and also then to follow up with Kirsten, and the virtual component, and how that may help influence, benefit the women's population.
But it's, the obvious benefits, right, are that there are no geographic barriers.
Yeah.
So we saw at Power, we had folks in attendance from 33 different countries. That's wonderful, right? So we actually tried to time it a little bit so that we could catch the West Coast, and certainly also folks in Western Europe. But we also had folks in Africa and even some Eastern European countries where the time difference was quite different from the one we sit in here. But then I contrast that. I mentioned the pitch competition where we had a live event with a room full of venture capitalists, and there's just nothing that replaces the energy, but more importantly, the networking opportunities. And so, as I said, that's why I think we're going to take a slightly different tact going forward with a hybrid event, so that we can engage as many people who can come, and that's why I offered the welcome to everyone here. But if you can come to New Jersey physically, all the better, because I think the networking opportunities are irreplaceable in a live setting.
Yeah, so it's interesting because our program has been virtual by necessity since we started. That has actually worked out really well for us in regards to mentorship, because the universities that we're working with are all over the United States. The mentors aren't all, both the previous session and the opening session talked about the talent problems. The biggest problem anyone who works in startups knows that's the biggest problem is your talent. And the virtual component allows us to tap mentors from the San Diego and the Cambridge area and connect them with people in North Carolina, or Florida, or wherever it is that these people that our particular equalizers, I like to call them equalizers, come from. What's interesting is, though, next year we actually do plan to have one in-person component as well, because we know how important that is, that seeing people face-to-face really helps you with your connection to them. And so we actually are planning on having a day that is focused on networking and training. MassBio has agreed to host it for us next year. It'll be either in March or May of next year, where we are hoping to fly in those who can make it. But we know not everyone's going to be able to, for exactly the reasons we have talked about already. We, on the virtual component again side of ours, is that the training that we do, we schedule the training ahead of time. We know, again, things come up. They may not be able to make it. We record all of our training, and we know our people go back and watch it because they come back and ask us questions. Hey, I'm just catching up on this one. I missed this particular thing. Can you explain that particular, item to me? So, there's a lot to be said for these hybrid programs, that there's a way to help people, whatever their circumstance might be, to get to the next step. They're not going to get, most people don't have the time to get 100% out of a program that they possibly could. But boy, if they get 75 to 80%, that's pretty darn good. Gets them at least some of those connections that they're going to need for the future. So I like the hybrid. I'm going to have another.
Yeah, and I was just going to add one more thing, just because from a scheduling and flexibility standpoint, the Empower conference is actually going to evolve quite quickly into sort of a platform with year-round content, and the ability to schedule mentoring sessions, workshops, startup showcases for different sectors, particularly the arts and the social sciences, where faculty entrepreneurs don't typically maybe source companies, but doing all that virtually allows us to provide and deliver much more content. So we're actually very excited about that. If anyone has a great platform, not platform, but virtual management, event management platform that you have success with, I'd love to hear from it.
Me too.
Because I'm not satisfied, and I don't think most of us are.
Any feedback on that with anybody that has used platform? I know you use Hoover, yeah?
I'm just curious how, I know I have some details, but I'm curious how you all finance these programs. Like, how are you funding it?
Interestingly, that was actually going to be my next question to Kit, to maybe talk about how you actually manage to secure some finances, because a lot of it is, there is no finances. A lot of it is its passion projects. We're a great example. We call it our 10 o'clock at night passion project, and as long as you have a team with 2 or 3 people that are passionate about it, one of them nudges the other person at 10 o'clock at night and we get it done. Our experience at Yale was, and I'm not sure whether I should be saying this, but we pushed, we worked super, super hard, and then circumstances were that a couple of us were not available to push so hard, and we saw the difference really dramatically, and that's what made people stand up and say, oh, we need to do something about this. So now it's a priority. So absolutely, but for actual financing, Kit, I would be delighted to hear about your efforts.
Oh yeah, perfect. So MIT has supported us financially, so they paid for like my salary for a few years. We also raised money, and this is for the initiative, and then I'll talk about financing for the founders. But for our initiative, North Pond gave a donation of around $750K, and that covered our first prize competition. So they're a venture capitalist from Boston, and I forgot to mention our prize competition. There's mentoring, the workshops, but also founders have the opportunity to win a grand prize of $250K and $100K. There's 2 runners up, so it is a lot of money. So North Pond donated that, and then we've raised money from Schmidt Futures and some other donors. So mostly donors who are interested in what we're doing. The funding for the faculty members is also a big challenge in terms of how they raise funding. So we do a lot of work in terms of matching them with investors, getting them pitch ready and matching them with investors to make sure that they are also financed, because we don't want to give them all this support and then kind of have them run into a brick wall.
Laura, I was curious, because you've said you yourself, your personal experience of starting up companies, and you mentor the women. Is there anything that you can share to encourage other people who might be setting up programs within their institute to support women faculty? Are there key take-home messages that you feel?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is transparency and access to resources. Mm-hmm. I think that what stops people oftentimes is that they don't know how to do things, or how much equity they should ask for, or whether they have IP, and it's sometimes the bar for asking the question to the right person is very high. So resources that are either anonymous, like a YouTube video, or available to people, I think would be very helpful. Again, I have a policy, and I'm not the only one, to always say yes to the first meeting with someone. I answer to a lot of cold emails. I myself have been fortunate to have people that answer to my cold emails, so I'm very invested in paying it forward, and I am joined by a large number of people that are the same. So I will encourage institutions even to formalize that, to make their faculty, their people, their entrepreneurs, their network accessible. And then having these events or facilitating exposure, as you guys are doing, to investors and showcasing people, I think will go a long way.
Thank you. And just being conscious of time, I want to cover a few other subjects. One thing which has been critically challenging for many people setting up programs like this is Title IX, which you refer to, Kirsten. So I think it's good to put it out there to make sure everybody's aware of it. If you are trying to set up a program like this, to be aware that any program that you have, if it's within certainly an academic institution, should never exclude anybody. But we always want to we have a focus to increase diversity for women and underrepresented groups. So I don't know whether anybody else wants to. In MIT, did you have to deal with the Title IX challenges?
May I also add to that? I mean, I'm sure everyone in this room, we're not an academic institution. We are investors. We come out of the nonprofit sector. We're very closely watching and have done preliminary legal analysis on what the SCOTUS ruling will be around affirmative action. There's a few scenarios, but there's almost no scenario when, or a situation in which whatever has been interpreted around affirmative action will remain. It will likely be much more restrictive, whether or not you get federal dollars. So on top of your question, also this concern that we certainly have, because we support lots of protected classes, not only around gender. We also have funding and investments for spinal cord injury entrepreneurs, definitely people of color. Nearly in most situations, depending on how that ruling will go, we would not be able to do any of that.
Work with the General Counsel's office. That is like, we just didn't, honestly, when we started the program, we just didn't even think of that. And that's what we tell everyone, is you need to be working with your General Counsel's office and having them, because potentially things are changing, just make sure you're staying on top of that. So we would have done things differently if we had done that in the first place.
And I mentioned it a bit subtly, but one of the main, not the main reason, but the way we can stay agnostic to future decisions by SCOTUS, et cetera, is our emphasis on companies and funders who have a commitment to DEI. And that crosses all gender, all race, all ethnicity, every categorization. So we think Empower can sustain regardless because of our overriding commitment to DEI.
And for us, part of the reason we're staying so focused in biotech is because our mission is lined up with that research project I told you with the 40 missing companies. So that's kind of how MIT sees our initiative, is that it needs to be like research backed in terms of there is a gap. But yes, we will be reaching out to our General Counsel. Thanks, Kristen.
I did mention it to Sinky too.
Yeah, we all have to be very aware of it. General Counsel is super important, and our goal is to put as many resources out there for all our academic researchers, and to give everybody that opportunity, and to encourage everybody. So it's wherever the opportunity is. But we do find that sometimes certain groups need a little bit more nudging, especially if we see it's a good opportunity. So but we are very conscious of it. We're about to wrap up. We've got a couple of minutes left. I wonder, the one thing, Kirsten, you said there was some things that your group felt they were missing and you had to put new programs in. I wonder whether those 3 extra programs that you introduced, what they were, because that might actually highlight something to us that we need to encourage.
Yeah, so one was they wanted a whole session on SBIR and STTR grants because they were like, you know what, we're not having always success with these. We don't understand why. We really need an expert to come in and help us with that. And honestly, just talk with NSF. They are so happy to help. So that was one of them.
Can I make a quick plug?
Yeah,
there is actually a session a week on Friday lunchtime here at Yale on exactly that. So if anybody's interested, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, because the issue is that early stage funding, them getting from bench to those next stages where other investors are going to be interested. That valley of death still absolutely exists, and so that's a lot of what most of the people that we're working with are seeking. Is they're not usually ready for venture investment. They're more on that pre-seed side, and so getting that. So they were trying to figure out some of that. They wanted a whole session actually on licensing from universities, which kind of surprised us, but they did. They were like, I don't understand how this licensing process works, and at most institutions, the founders really can't be involved in the negotiations. It depends on your institution on how that works. But they wanted to understand what it is that they needed to know about a license agreement and what it was their lawyer was saying to them, what the investors were saying to them, what the tech transfer office was saying to them. So we did a whole session. We were surprised by that, but absolutely very easy for us to do. We have a whole session on founders equity. We added that in because our OUP has taped a bunch of seminars on this, but there's taping a seminar and someone watching it versus them being able to ask real-time questions. And so even though we already had that, they wanted a session where they could just talk to an investor about their specific questions to do with founders equity. So we did a live session on that. But we have a whole, basics of startups and what you're thinking about a startup and fundraising and how that works and what you need to think about fundraising. We have basics on pitching, and then we have a product mindset, thinking about what it is that you're actually trying to develop with this company and why investors should be interested in this. So those are kind of our. We have a whole bunch of other ones that we're planning for the future as well. So I would say it's not as well honed as your program, but we're learning from each other. This is why we're all synergistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very quickly, because we are out of time.
I just see great work you guys are doing, but I see redundancy here as well. And if they have a platform, maybe all these contacts should go there instead of everybody trying to make a class all the same thing.
There are many joint and shared resources here, and bringing everybody together here is what our goal is. I thank you so much for being here today, sharing your experiences, and I'd like to thank our panel. Thank you for all participating.
Thank you for biggest thing for the. Cheryl Sleva, Dr. Cheryl Sleva. Not in our
That's great.
Great person to say what is Yes, that would be perfect. We schedule for you for next year's cohort. I would love to. Great. Can I connect with you on the guys? I don't connect with you on the I'm maybe out on my little chart that I have on Facebook, so I can share with you like. Oh, not
And I teach the second goes a year from now. In order to have this product market, we need to have something in the bottle. So I decided to write your talking about it to show the I would be honored if you wanted to. So I will be speaking with you and I'll get all time. That'd be great. All right. So thank you. So she said, oh, that's so I am Right. So actually now it's like we're very and then yeah,
She's a
right. The charity is serious. Yeah, we actually are very there's not like, so